Hi gaming guys, and welcome to episode 16 of Global Contenders, the review series for Gran Turismo's touring car selection. And in this particular pick we're featuring a real touring car in the very popular DTM class. And this particular vehicle is one of the most popular and most long-standing touring cars of the whole Gran Turismo franchise. And the vehicle is, of course, the Vauxhall, or Opel, as they're both exactly the same, Calibra DTM touring car. This is one of the relatively few all-wheel drive touring cars on the game, especially of the real selection of touring cars. And alongside the Alfa Romeo 155 touring car, this has been a part of Gran Turismo for quite some time. Way back as far as Gran Turismo 2, I can remember really liking the look of this car, and I believe, if I remember correctly, it was a really good handling car even back then. Now on GT6, as well as on pretty much every other Gran Turismo game, the Calibra, alongside the 155 as well, are known for being really good handling cars. They're very easy to drive, they have a huge amount of grip, they're actually surprisingly beginner friendly as well. And the all-wheel drive means that overall they really do save you in potentially tricky situations, such as when it's raining on the track, if you happen to lose control going over a crest, or maybe just catch a curb, as cars can often do. And of course with a rear-wheel drive car, especially a lighter racing car, you can very easily lose grip to a rear wheel. Whereas with an all-wheel drive car, you really don't need to worry about that anywhere near as much. It's much easier to keep the car under control and also to use more of the power that it actually has. Now in the case of the Calibra, you've got a pretty decent amount of power, though at the same time it's not among the most powerful of DTM machines. Like the Alfa Romeo 155, it does sit a little bit lower than you might hope as far as power. The Astra, the CLK touring car, etc., they put out some serious horsepower, around or even in some cases more than 800 horsepower. The Alfa Romeo though, and also this model, the slightly older ones, are much more modest. This car puts out 620 horsepower, 286 foot-pounds of torque, which is remarkably low in comparison to its power, and peak power comes at really high RPM levels. You're talking around 10,000 RPM for decent power to be running out of this car, so it's an engine that really does like to be worked hard, again, just like the Alfa Romeo. And as far as weight, despite being all-wheel drive, the weight is still really good. 1,060 kilos is pretty lightweight for an all-wheel drive vehicle, especially of its size. It's not an overly small car. As far as horsepower per tonne, you're looking at a reasonable 585, which isn't amazing, but given that it's not as powerful as some, it's also not surprising. And the PP, again, like the Alfa Romeo, is very good on this car. It's not very high at all given the power and weight that you've got to work with. In fact, the PP on this model is only 579, so you can perfectly reduce this car down to say 575 PP racing, maybe for seasonal events or online events, etc., and it will serve you really well. You're looking at over 600 horsepower, it still doesn't weigh that much, and those two things are a really good combination to have really at any PP level, but especially as comparatively low as 575. Now as far as price, it is of course one of the real touring cars, and it is a historically significant one, so it is a little bit more expensive than some others. 1.25 million though is still pretty reasonable for this car given how good it is, that it's a real touring car, and that it's so historically significant. It's up there with vehicles like the GT1, the R390, the Calsonic Skyline, the Pennzoil Skyline, and various others as being really staples of the Gran Turismo franchise. And for that alone, the car just has such a great nostalgia factor, and even though it's not a premium vehicle, it still looks pretty good. Alongside vehicles like the Plymouth Roadrunner, it has kind of a semi-premium look to it from the outside, but it would be nice of course to have it in fully detailed glory. For the moment though, that's not an option, and the real question is, what can it do? Because you see a fair amount of people using it, along with the 155, so is it as good as everyone assumes it is? Or can it be beaten? Is it one of those cars which the crowd uses because the crowd uses it, or are there genuinely better options? Well, on this occasion, the crowd is right. This is a really good car, and people use it because it's good. There are very few cars, in fact, apart from the 155, that can match this car so well. They have such similar specs in so many ways that they just make great rivals. Personally, of the two, I think I would probably go with the Alfa Romeo, because it's got a little bit more of an oddball look to it, but the Calibra is more of a safe bet. The Calibra won't ever really surprise you. The handling is very dependable, very consistent. The performance as well doesn't really surprise you in an overly good or bad way. It does exactly what you'd expect it to do. And it's just a really safe bet of touring car to go for. If you do decide to buy the Calibra, it will serve you extremely well, and it goes without saying, of course, it is a vehicle that you can get victories with. So overall, if you haven't, by some weird chance, tried this car yet, even if you're not the biggest fan of touring cars but just need a good racing machine, even just for seasonals, then this is a great one to go for. But that's it overall for this particular pick. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.